and welcome to Our People, the podcast where we give space for Holdeman Stories. We focus on hope, healing, and inspiration. Connection, consciousness, and love are the driving motivations for this project. Remember to have grace for those who have chosen to speak out and share their experience. Please enjoy the story you will hear today.
Welcome to Our People's Podcast. Today, I'm your host, Amanda, and with me, I have Herman Friesen. He has been kind enough to join and to tell us his story. So welcome, Herman.
Hi. I grew up Holdeman. I'm from a lovely family, and my father was a preacher until I was about 4 years old, and he got benched, and I could tell you why, possibly why, from what I've heard, but that'd be another story. I was converted when I was 10 years old and baptized when I was 11. And, I've got a lot of reasons I should have become perfect. My great grandfather was one of the last bishops. And according to my understanding, he was opposed to the title. And I don't see him listed as a bishop anywhere in the conference decisions. And he didn't live to see the 1939 conference when that title seemed to be abolished. I don't think it's in the minutes that it was abolished. It's not in the minutes, but it disappeared about that time. And they talked about ministers being, and I think they still have their unwritten bishops, but I don't know for sure on how it all works. So I should have been a perfect person. And so why did I go amiss, And like Apostle Paul says, he had the advantage, grew up in the one true church. No, he didn't say that. He said he was circumcised, and I wasn't circumcised as a child. But where did I fall short? And I was, I got excommunicated twice for fornication. Was it the sex education that fell short, or was it what went wrong? And I contemplated on some of this sometimes, and my father showed me the cattle out in the field doing it, and said it wasn't that much different for humans, and and they've got the private schools to keep us away from that. But I had two hospital stays when I was young, and one I had an abscess on my eyebrow or up in my eye, and my mom was afraid to get in the eye, and they took me to the hospital, and I was put in there for 5 days, and that was old years ago, and there was 10 or 12 in the same room, and they would pull the curtain around you, and the lady come and wondered if I wanted my back washed. And she had her daughter there. I think it was her daughter or whoever it was. And they washed my back, or she washed my back. And then she got a call. I don't know if it was over the radio or a loudspeaker, and she had to leave. And the girl, they'd done my back, and I turned on and the lady left, and the girl asked if she could wash my tummy. And I said yes. And I was quite chubby back then, and she said my breasts were bigger than hers, but she had bigger nipples. And she took my hand and put it under her
Blouse.
and the little, I think I was only 9 or 10 years old, but the sheet went up a little bit at the bottom, and she said that works. And then she explained to me that she already has hair growing down there, and mine would be coming soon too.
Well, you got more sex education from that visit to the hospital than you did at home.
I think so too. And then I was baptized at 11 years old. I still remember I was sure I was going to hell, and I went to up and I prayed, and things seemed to. You know what most people, they stand in a revival meeting or something, but I went up on the hill and I prayed, and then I went back and told Mom, and I seemed to be so much better, and so that was my conversion experience. I sometimes have wondered if I got converted twice in my life, but anyway, it'll go on to the other one later. And then I was baptized. I think it was at the next revival meetings, and but yeah, and then there was more sex education. I think in grade 6 when we were all in class. It was public school back then, and all the girls were taken out, and teacher and us boys were left there alone. And one of them explained to us he explained to us why the girls were going to have their periods, and they were telling them about it. And he says, I got something for the guys, he said, and he pulled out a brown bag, and there he had whatever Playboy or whatever it was back then. And this definitely intrigued me. And back then, I'm not sure when we changed from Eaton's catalogs in the outhouses to tissue paper, but the Eaton catalogs had all the ladies' lingerie, and I think my mother got worried with where we were watching it. And anyway, my dad, when I was 4 years old, he built a house, and the stairs going up there, it was a small house when you think of today's standards, and I still remember I'd like to play beside the stairs, and then when the girls and the sisters went up the stairs, I could look up their dresses, and
At 4,
so.
Herman.
But
At 4
I
years
don't know.
old?
That was 4 when I moved there. I think I was older before.
Okay.
Later, they put a wall up there so you couldn't.
They saw you sitting by the stairs a little too much.
Maybe I wasn't the only one. I don't know.
Maybe not.
And then when I was 14, I broke my leg, and I went to the hospital 11 days. And I still remember the first day I heard this music, and I thought I was in heaven. And later I found out it was the Mennonite Brethren had come to sing there, and they used the accordion and whatever. And that made me wonder, if they're going to have instruments in heaven, why can't we have them now?
Right. Yeah.
But
true,
anyway, the fellow I was staying with there, he had also there was 2 in a room then. That things had moved up. This is
yes,
the new
they'd gotten better from 12 to 2.
hospital, which has since been torn down. But there was 2 of us, and he was a 17-year-old boy, and he told me every story about how he got into women's pants and the likes. And I was 14, and I learned learned quite a bit there, but I was still a slow learner. And I still remember uh, they got a girl come visit him, and they pulled the curtain around. There's two of us in there, and I could hear stuff going on, and I eased my way up in the bed because there was about a foot between the curtain to take a look, and she didn't have a taken her sweater off or something, but uh, easing my way up so I could peek in there, peeping Tom sort of thing. I pulled the nurse's button, and
Oh
the nurse was there in about
no.
30 seconds.
Well, you
Mind you,
ruined that one.
they sort of got a warning, I think. and I find it funny, but they moved that fellow out of there, and within an hour he was moved. He had to move closer to the nurse's station.
They had him pegged for a troublemaker.
But anyway, and the nurses wondered what I saw. Well, I saw nothing.
You learned young. I saw nothing.
But anyway, yeah, and growing up, I was converted. I was told to read the Bible, and I still don't know if it was my hormones or what, but when Dad got a Encyclopedia Britannica, and that I would search for information on there, and then yeah, where was I at here? We got the Britannica and and I was supposed to read the Bible, and you start reading in Genesis and Exodus, and some of that is pretty boring, but then you get to I knew all about Lot and his two daughters, and I don't know why those were the only ones that seemed to really, and King David, and watching the Bathsheba bathe, and so but finding out where I went wrong, I don't know. I could go on forever, and I don't know if it gained anything for me. And I went to when I was 20 years old. I went to Bible class. Well, I spent the first couple of jobs were in the winter, in the bunkhouses, and usually I would be in there with at least one or two other Holdemans. There would be others in there, and 2 winters I spent with two fellows that walked across. We'd both been in the army in the Second World War and walked across Europe just about to Italy, and they had a few stories that I probably won't repeat all here. But then at 20 years old, I went to boys' class, and one of the things I noticed it was mostly supposed to be they had mostly boys from the U.S. is where it started, the boys' class, and they had to work in hospitals and the likes, and those ladies were awful. They, try to get a good man, and they would do anything to. So you had to be watchful for these girls that wanted to hurt us or take us or deceive us or whatever.
Deflower you.
Empower, whatever.
You had to be careful for deflower. I said you had to be careful for the girls that wanted to deflower you.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yes, and that and then we went through. Me and my cousin went to Tucumcari, New Mexico. I believe it was the last. For a while, that's the only place they were hauled, and I believe it was the last time that it was held there, but I'm not sure on that. And then we went through Mexico and seen most of the mission spots, and it was a good experience. And come up through back home through Arizona and California, and you know, one of the things I remember that I was never. The leader said, according to statistics, there was 12 of us there. There would likely be 2 that would be excommunicated, and that was never going to be me. I wanted to be in that church, and now me and my cousin went there, and I believe he's expelled too. They were both expelled, and I don't know about the other 10. I know one is the minister down south because he asked my sister about me or something like that. But you know, it never occurred to me that I was going to be faithful, and but after coming back from class, I had to go to work, and I still remember, you know, I had another fellow, and I liked my Tang. It was a new drink that had come out, orange juice, and a couple of times I seemed to be a little dizzy, and then once it turned sour or something, and I put it in the garbage, and then my buddy came back and he said, I put my own vodka in there. And I realized then that, you know, I've been going to work half cut a couple of times because I'd had good shots of this. and so, but anyway, we were staying downtown Grand Prairie, and I was working shift work. And one time I was just coming in at they had 3 shifts, and I think the last shift I come in about 1 o'clock, and this other lady was coming in, and she wondered if I could help her out, and um, well, I'll go in and then all of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and so yeah, and I went in there, and she said her arm was so sore and she couldn't get that snap or that hook at the bottom of her bra. And so I just nicely got it unhooked, and there was a key in the door, and there was another big fellow come in there, and I was out of there fast. And I guess the Lord had saved me there. She wasn't expecting him apparently, but anyway, I'm glad I didn't get beat up.
Right.
And anyway, the fellow I was with there, I think across the hall, there was a sort of a room, apartment building or whatever. I know he got quite friendly with some of the girls who were going to college across the way, but I wasn't, I, much as I would like to have been friendly and all that, I was a sort of a shy guy. And I was okay then for a while. But I would buy the odd Playboy or whatever, and then I would feel guilty and throw it away. And so that was my fight there at that time, and so it was. I was probably 22 already when I got hurt, and I had to go to Edmonton for to see workman's comp, which is work wages. I don't know what you got in the States there,
Yeah,
but
same thing. Yep.
and I had a room, but I decided to go into the lounge down below, and there was 3 girls there, and all of a sudden 2 left, and I started talking with them a bit, and the one that was left was wondered if I could walk her home, and I decided, okay, I'd had a drink or 2 already, and I walked her home, and she put her babysitter home, and next thing you knew, we were in bed, and I felt so bad, I went back and I told the preacher, and I think it was on a Sunday night, Monday night, I was excommunicated.
Yep. They don't waste time on that one.
And I was never, I was, there was no real help for that. You just get excommunicated. And I was never going to do that again. And 3 weeks or something like that, I was reaccepted. After all, this is the one true church system. And I'm not sure how much later it was when I would buy a Playboy or whatever, or Hustler, and then throw it away. But uh, others had trouble with drinking, and I drank some, but
But you like the ladies.
they intrigued me somehow. And yeah, and later it was in I think it was probably almost a year later, but I'm not sure exactly. I was up north, and I uh, uh, I was looking for work, and I went to I had a tent, and I set up a tent in sort of a little campground there, and I went to the bar, and here at the bar, this lady asked me if I could take her home after it was about closed, or take her, and she got in the car and everything, and I asked her where home was, and she said, "Your home." And then I explained to her I was just staying out in the tent, and we get there. And, well, she said, "Well, that's what I was doing too, but it was awful cold there." And and we get there, and we put our sleeping bags together, and we spent the night.
Okay. You stayed a lot warmer, I take it.
We it's a lot warmer when there's 2.
Right.
And then, I realized what I'd done, and this is a death sin, and but if I go tell the preachers, this is going to I'm going to get excommunicated again. So I didn't say anything to the preachers about that, and I realized it didn't seem to have any help for me, and but I just quit going to church. I worked 6 weeks or 8 weeks in BC after that, and I think I stopped. I homesteaded years ago at Fort Vermilion. I was going to be a farmer, and I stopped there, and I was pretty depressed. I closed the bar down at one night and got in my truck, and they just built a new bridge there, and there was going to be fencing all the way. And I stopped to take a leak, and here's barbed wire there. Well, a guy could use barbed wire on the farm all the time. And I loaded the pickup up with barbed wire completely. And I'd grown quite a bit of cannabis that summer, and I had 2 garbage bags full of cannabis behind the back seat. And I drove a little further, and I couldn't seem to stay awake, so I pulled off to the edge of the road and had a nap. And I think I slept for 4 or 5 hours, but that's when, and it's 3, 4, 5 hours. It was 2 or 3 in the afternoon, I think, or 1. I don't know for sure what time I got stopped by the police. And, well, I thought I'm okay. I'm sober by now. And they said, well, you got no license plate on the back. And I think when I slept the first time, someone had stole the license plates. They needed it worse than I did. And then they could smell a little booze, because I think I'd opened one of the dozen there, but I thought, well, I'm safe, sober now. And back then they didn't have breathalyzers on the side of the road, but they could haul you into just at least half an hour drive to. And I thought, well, I'm sober. And but when I blew, I was double the 0.08,
Oh,
and I
you're
lost.
not sober.
I wasn't sober, but what the heck? How had I got there? I'd only had 1 beer since the night before, but I think I was probably just about at the death point, according to the scales, when I left the bar. But anyway, I spent 8 hours in the whatever you call it, the cooler or whatever, and I was worried about the stolen wire. I was worried about the pot behind the seat. And all I got charged with, they didn't realize the wire was stolen. This dumb farmer
Right.
hauling wire. But anyway, they didn't realize that. They never looked behind the seat. And I got charged with 0.08, over 0.08. And I lost my license for 6 months. And so yeah, I got a driver's license for the territories when I was up there, and then which I think was really as to use a different driver's license, but I never got stopped those 6 months. I only drove 6,000 miles during those when I had mine. So I don't know what they would have done if they'd have, but that's I wasn't a good I think today they would have called it depressed when I. But anyway, I was going to hell anyway. The church couldn't help me. That's the way I saw it. I might as well have as much fun on the way. And then it was wine, women, and song. And
But what's so sad is that there was nothing wrong with you. You had, it's a very natural progression in life. Like you weren't broken, but okay. But yes, I know what
but
you're
anyway,
meaning.
yeah. So my goal after that was to have sex. And I got my face slapped a few times. Nobody taught me how to until it was a year or two later. I'm not sure how long. There was one of the guys. There was 6 guys staying together, and most of them worked. And one of them had found a book or bought a book, How to Make Love to the Single Girl. And that was something else for me. Look them in the eyes, ask them questions, find out what they really want, and then you can be the deliverer.
So
And
Herman, that was just you.
and that changed.
Okay, so that was your Bible. That was your new Bible.
Yeah, and it worked. And I don't know why I never thought of getting married then. And earlier, I had asked 2 Holdeman girls to get about.
Wait. You said you never thought about getting married after that? Because
No,
you're the man
it,
our mothers warned us about. That why would he what's that saying about why would you buy the cow when you get the milk for free?
yeah, I've heard that one before. But anyway, uh, yeah, and I kept well, that was a wondrous little booklet, and next thing you know, I could stop at a bar and find some lonely woman and spend the night. And uh, I still remember when I was. It was probably uh, 2000 no, 1970, 76 or so. But anyway, I was in the bar, and 3 girls come in there and were grabbing a case of beer, and I said something about having a good party, and they said, well, you grab a case of beer and you can come with us. And I thought there were 3 young ladies, and it was one of them was mother of two of the two and her 2 oldest daughters, but she had 8 children. She was 34 years old, and I was only 28. And well, we went to the house, and she was 34, and she had 8 children and 8 grandchildren. And I guess she started at 14 or something like that. And I spent the weekend there, and but then that sort of made me wonder what on earth is going to happen to me. You know, here I am, 28 years old, and I you know, sex pleasure is pleasure, yes, but it only lasts a certain while, and then you got to live. and I was quite depressed, I think, and I phoned a weekend after that or so. I phoned Alberta Mental Health, and I made an appointment to see a counselor. And but then, and it was almost a month before I was going to get to see her. And during that time, I met my first wife, and she was such a wonderful person. And I'd worked for her father, and we had lots to talk about. She was almost 12 years younger than me. And no, we were married when I was 30 and she was 18. And so we got married, and yeah, I was a Christian. And we
But you were not a Holdeman.
I was not a Holdeman, and she was my dad's. Her parents bought the place next to my parents. So I had worked there when I was about 18, and she was about 6, I guess.
Okay,
But
so she wasn't
it was
Holdeman
such,
either.
it was such a lovely family, and uh, we met in January, and we were married in May, and it was wonderful. And I still remember when we got married, they were all huggers, and sisters, grandmother, mother, all give me a big hug, and that's when I realized, hugging wasn't always sexual. If I'd been hugged by a girl before, uh, and
It was going to lead somewhere.
somehow I got this. I think I got that screwed around, and there I realized, no, they don't all want to get into my pants or whatever.
Right.
And yeah, that's something I learned then. And we moved up to Fort Vermilion, where I had my homestead. And it was she worked for the school division, as a secretary at the school, and I had several different jobs, and it was a wonderful time. But it was, and I think she would have liked to go to church, but I wasn't going to darken the door of a church again very badly. And in fact, she had found the Lord at a Bible camp, and but somehow we never. I think we went to the Holdeman Church once or twice there. There wasn't much else up there at that time, but then and then she passed so suddenly, almost. It was well, we had a vehicle accident, and I believe I stopped at a stop sign and reached under the seat for my cigarettes, and it zoomed ahead, or it rolled ahead, and a fuel truck hit us, and they picked me up for dead. They phoned there's one dead the person, but they took me and my wife into the hospital, and I still remember my neighbor telling me that they would suck my, both lungs were collapsed. I broke 7 ribs, a shoulder, and my skull was fractured. And so I don't remember anything for days, but they said they would suck my lungs out and they could hear me cursing for 2
whole
blocks
floor.
down the way. So it wasn't my fault that I'm still alive. It must have been my mother's prayers. But anyway, she passed away. I still remember going to see her in the hospital. They wheeled me there, I think, with a wheelchair to see her. Or I went with a nurse, and it's full of tubes and everything. And then she passed away, and I went to her funeral, but I had to have somebody taking care of me all the time. I wore a bra or whatever for my shoulder injury, a shoulder fracture. And
How old was she?
she was 18.
So she died the same year you got married?
No, no, she would have been 19 when she passed away.
Oh, that is terrible.
And I was in the hospital. They were amazed at how fast I
Recovered?
recovered. Yes, and I was in the hospital for a month, and then I went to live with my parents, where they come and got me. And the church, you should get right, and all the rest. And I just couldn't handle that. And I went and lived with my cousin for a while, and there I was supposed to see doctors and medical, and they put me in a class with people with different problems, and some of them had drug problems and different ones. I don't. One of the ladies I still see her because she was a neighbor at Fort Vermilion that was going to the same class. Or day treatment, they called it, day treatment. And I did that for 2 weeks and then signed myself out.
Well, I'm sorry, what were you there for though?
It was supposed to help me with adjusting for my loss. I'm not sure. Mental health suggested it, and I took it.
Okay.
And
for the loss of your wife.
Pardon?
For the loss of your wife.
Loss of my wife, I think, was mostly what it was for. And some of the others there. So another thing, that when I was in the hospital, I was in the lung department, and me and another fellow would sometimes go out and have a cigarette, and that would irritate all the others in the hospital area. It is the old part, which is now of University Hospital. It was old then, and but it was next to the burn unit, and I would see those people with no ears and all kinds of suits, and that then I realized that it could be worse than I had it. Some people must have, and spent some time at Grand Prairie with my cousin, and then as soon as they said I could drive, because I wasn't supposed to drive because the one eye they didn't think would come back to normal again, and it did. But when I could see well enough, and the doctor says I should be able to drive, I bought an old pickup and went up to Fort Vermilion. But things weren't, I wasn't going to go back to the way I lived before, and yet and I learned to be the one. Before I met Lila, I'd learned to be the sort of institute uh, get sex or whatever. But once I got back to Fort Vermilion, it seemed to, I wasn't going to go to that, but it seemed like it was coming my way. So, and next thing you know, I was sleeping or spending time with different girls, and the girls, if they sleep around, they're sluts, but men, they're just a stud.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's the way it should be, but that's the way society seems to look at it sometimes.
Yep.
And but it was a while later. I was actually I got and my neighbor had two tickets for the fireman's ball, and they couldn't go. And would I take one or two of them? And well, I didn't find a girl to go with me, so I took one of them. And there I met Ethel, who became my second wife sometime later. And she was a wonderful girl, and she, I think, was given a gift from God. And so
Well, what gift was that?
pardon?
What gift? You said
I
she was
say a
given a
gift.
gift from God.
Ethel, when she came into my life in Fort Vermilion, and
So you felt like Ethel was the gift from God.
well, Lila was a gift from God, and Ethel was a gift from God. Yes, and so we got married in Toronto. We were married for 26, almost 26 years, and it didn't look like she could have children. We had foster kids for a while, and uh, and then she did when we did finally have two children, two girls. Well, we adopted a boy, and then we had a girl, and life was good, and life was good, and I worked at the prison. Yeah, we were first in Grand Prairie after we were married, and then we were in High Level, and then that's when I started studying again, and got my GED, uh, and I found it very interesting, the power engineering, and I started studying that and water treatment, and I was working for the government up at High Level, just north of High Level, and at the prison here, they needed someone with power engineering and water treatment is what they wanted, and I don't think there was very many with both those certificates. And the government paid for my pardon so that I could come and work at the prison here, and paid my move. That's the only job switch I had in my life, that they moved us. And
I'm
but
sorry, the government paid for your pardon.
yeah,
What?
so that I could work at the prison here. See, the over 08 had been a criminal, a federal offense, and
Oh,
with that on the books, you
So
couldn't
they
work.
needed to sponge that little drunk driving thing you did.
Yeah, that took that away, and so. But it is with me and Ethel that in high level, she talked us into going to church. For the children's sake, we should go to church, you know, and it's a good thing. And so pretty soon I was on the board of the church. We was a United Ecumenical Church. There
Well,
wasn't
that
enough,
escalated quickly. Ethel talked you into it. Before you knew it, you were on the board.
and I could speak religious quite well, and if somebody asked me if I was saved, I certainly was. But deep down in my heart, I always thought, well, you know, to get to heaven, I'd have to join the Holdemans again. But that just can't happen. And we had quite a bit of financial problems back then too, because I had. Well, on the farm, I was going to pay cash for everything, or pay, and then that would go getting slow, and I started borrowing money before uh, about the time I married Lila, and and then when me and Ethel got married, we both had quite a bit of debt, and so I still remember financial counseling telling us that we'd have uh, to declare bankruptcy, but that didn't happen. I we Ethel's father had been had killed animals for butchering for his part of his extra income, and Ethel knew how uh, to cook kidney and liver and hearts, and so we did just about the impossible to stay out of debt and keep the farm, and that was quite a. And I still remember when I was at the birth of both of my daughters, and you know, I thought God would give me sons. We adopted a boy, but I thought God would give us sons. I uh, had enough women problems in my life without, you know, two more.
Now,
But
this was God paying you back for that.
yeah, I've sometimes worried about God getting me back for things. But anyway, uh, I do believe my children. Uh, I never abused them, and God answered that prayer. And yet, and it was we moved to to Grimshaw and then Peace River, and it was quite by surprise when you know, the girls went to college. Uh, that took finances, but as well. But she when the children were fairly small, she was in the hospital one year for mental health issues for 3.5 months of the year, 2.5 at one time and a month at another time. So I still remember her getting up in the church at Curd Creek. We were at Curd Creek, and there was going to be a meeting in the evening, and somebody wondered if it was a members meeting or not, and no, it wasn't, so we could go, and we went, but I think we were the only non-members there, and Ethel got up and thanked them for my relatives looked after our kids, and sometimes when she was in the hospital, and she thanked them for that, and she wondered if they would forgive Herman. And of course, they forgave me, but that didn't stop the excommunication. Somehow that doesn't add up with me, but anyway, that it was almost well, almost 26 years we were married, and she died suddenly. In fact, she'd ended up at the hospital a few times, and the last time she'd been to the hospital, she was there 10 days, and they changed her medication. We thought that everything had changed, but she died from flash pulmonary edema, they call it, and I don't. They still seem to be ignorant about what causes that, whether it was the medication for her depression or what it was. I'm not sure, but so she was gone, and and I wasn't going to go back to my old way of life, but I was alone and lonely.
How old were your children when she passed?
And well, my children were in university. Well, my one daughter took 6 weeks or 6 months off of her college and stayed with me the first 6 weeks, and then my second daughter finished her college, and she got a temporary job for maternity leave, teaching in the second month. But so I wasn't, and then after that, my son, who come and stayed with me for a while, but and Ethel had gotten me to go to church, and I was still going to church, but I was pretty lonesome, so we got plenty of fish. Nowadays, back then, earlier, we had never seen that sort of thing, and there was all these lonely widows, and you get to talk, and next thing you know, they're not worried about getting pregnant, and they're not and I was spending the night with them, and it seemed almost like I had no control over this thing. And I still remember, I don't know how she found out. It was probably 2 years after Ethel died, but my one daughter told me that as a Christian, I shouldn't be spending the night with other ladies. And that hit me very strongly, my own daughter reproving me, and rightfully so. And I suspect maybe she knew our neighbor across the back alley, that maybe they saw vehicles stay overnight or whatever. I didn't have any children staying with me then, but small town things get around, I guess.
Yes.
But and Ethel had got me to go to church, and she had got me to start reading Our Daily Bread so that we'd have devotion time together, and but also uh, I think while we were married and we were eating liver, and I sort of changed my God from ladies to to the almighty dollar. I was determined I was going to get rich. And
How'd that work out for you?
well, I had two business. Besides working, I had two businesses for a while. I had
Wow.
USANA or a health business, and I also was selling solar panels on the internet, and I did pretty good on that. And then I started renting out, buying. When I get some money, I would buy real estate and rent. I had a sixplex in Manning, and I bought the house next door, and I never really made any money in the rental business. I renting, but when the real estate goes up in price, you can make your dollar. The place next door to where I was living, I bought it for 90 and sold it for 231, which
Good for
was
you.
pretty neat change.
Yeah.
And but then I bought one for 58 or something like that, and it got condemned, and I think I lost about 50,000 on that deal. So
That's
you win
terrible.
on some and you lose on some, but the rental part, no, I had to evict 3 different people during my, and you lose money every time you evict, and if you don't evict, you lose more. You know, they can talk all they want about the rich landlords, but that and the solar panels, I'm still doing the USANA. It's a nutritional company, and it's done wonders for me. But the solar panels, I was spending so much time that a year before Ethel died, I give that up. And I realized that if I wanted any family time at all, then I have to
Scale down.
work. Yeah, so I shut that down, and so I was still uh, single. I was lonely. I would I wanted to get to heaven and wanted to be right, but you know, and I think I read all of John Holdeman's books and most of uh, Menno Simon's, and I went to, I think it was almost 2 years after uh, Ethel died, or maybe a year. I'm not sure. I went to Santa Vive Health Retreat, and there they were supposed to look after your spiritual, your mental, your physical, nutritional. Uh, there's 4 things. I'm not sure if I got them right there, but the psychologist there asked me if I'd ever read the Purpose Driven Life, and it's got 40 chapters, and I'd read it, and she said, I think you should read it again. Just take your time, 1 chapter at a day, and think about it. And that, I think, was one of the things that that I noticed that John Holdeman's books would have he'd expand, have a scripture, and he'd talk about it for a page and a half. And on Rick Warren's book on the purpose-driven life, he would have a dozen or more scriptures on 1 page. It was mostly scripture, and to me, I'm a strong believer in the Bible, and I don't need that much human wisdom that John Holdeman or some of the others seem to put out. But anyway, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I had a hard time really believing that God loved me. I mean, after all, I've been so wicked that he'd taken two wives away from me. And so, this idea, it says in the Bible, God is love, but I couldn't seem to get that by me. And I do remember it was Christmas Eve, and at work you usually have to go to do your work, but when things are running smooth and you're alone at the water plant, I had my Bible, briefcase with my Bible and my and the conference decisions. Well, going before that, I realized, well, in order to get to heaven, I'm going to have to join this church, and so I'd phoned the minister at Curd Creek about mid-December, but I left a message on his answering machines, and it was Christmas Eve that I was, and I realized that I had a hard time believing that, some people would say that believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you'll be saved, and I had a tough time really believing that I was saved, and it was that evening I read, or not, Mark 9:23. It's where the fellow came to Jesus with uh, a boy that was demon possessed, and Jesus said, "Well, believe," and he said, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." And I realized that I could pray to God to help me to believe, and that I did just that, and things seemed to light up right there and then. And in that same briefcase, I had my Bible. And I read Revelations 28:18 to 19. It talks about you're not supposed to add to the scriptures. And then I had the conference books beside me there, and if the Holdeman will tell you that that's not adding to the scriptures. It's sort of guidelines. Well, if you don't follow the guidelines, you get excommunicated. And when you read about forgiveness, and oh yes, they forgive you, but they still excommunicate you, or still won't eat at the same table. It doesn't add up to me, no matter how I change. But that's when life changed for me. Was that right then and there? And it was that evening. I still remember it. Was like God said no so loud and clear, and I was alone in the water plant there. The mill was running smoothly, and so they didn't want any disturbance or anything. So I walked around that water plant just to make sure nobody else had yelled no. And that's when I realized that a person doesn't have to join that church. I spent 40 years in the wilderness thinking that, well, I'll have to get into that church somehow again to get to heaven. And that's such a crock of whatever. And yeah, that to me, I don't condemn all the people in that church. Some of them will get to heaven, I'm quite sure. And one of the things I was going to mention, about a year after Ethel died, I was in Salt Lake City for a SANA convention, or my health and wellness system. And on a Tuesday, I got an email, and I just about X'd it and as spam or something, but I decided to read it a little closer. And there's this girl looking for Herman Friesen, and worked in the lumber industry north of Slave Lake in the 75, 76, I believe. Yeah. And she seemed to know quite a bit about me, so I emailed back and said I knew Herman Friesen fairly well. And I might get her to give me, if she'd give me more information, like her phone number and a few things. And she sent me back her phone number, and so I called her on the phone, and I was still in Salt Lake City, and this was on a Thursday, and I wondered what she was interested in or whatever, and well, she said, I'm actually looking for my natural father. And I just about hung up on her. But then I, I said, well, maybe, tell me a little bit about your mother. And so she said, well, she worked in the bar in Slave Lake or whatever at that time. And she was cheerful, or I forget what she said, but anyway, I realized then that there might be something to this. And I said, well, maybe we could meet. And I set a time for Monday at 5:30 in Edmonton. And I had already booked a hotel in downtown Edmonton. And we could meet there in the lobby and go from there. Well, I got back Sunday, and Monday morning I had a dentist appointment. And I met my youngest daughter there at the dentist appointment because we made appointments there before we went to before she went to. And anyway, I'd had an appointment at 9:30 or 10, one of the first ones, I think. And she had at 10:15, and we talked for about 10. And I said, there's this girl that thinks I'm her father, wants to meet me. Well, she says, I want to meet her too. And little did I realize that Ethel had told him, you may find some brothers and sisters or something. Because
Ethel knew your ways.
knew my history fairly well. And so I still had mixed feelings. I knew I hadn't always been careful and all the rest. But so she went on her way. I went on her way, and then at 5:50, I was in the lobby of the hotel at 5:15, and here's this girl coming, and I thought it was my youngest daughter again. And I was a little bit irritated. Why does she have to come and disturb this? And then when the lady got a little closer, I realized it wasn't my youngest daughter. And I asked her, is this Serena? She'd given her name, and yes. And
you said, well, no doubt then. I mean, because I just thought you were my youngest daughter. Turns out you're my oldest daughter.
and so we went and had and we talked a little bit about her mother, and then I really remembered her mother. I tried to take her out quite often, and she'd no, and then New Year's Eve she wondered if we could go to this party. Her boss was retiring or shutting it down, and it was 2-3 miles out in the country. And so we went out there. At 3 o'clock in the morning, it was 40 below, and there was no taxis running. So we took the railroad track back to town. We walked the railroad track, and we had talked a bit, and got to the hotel room, and we did everything we could to get warm.
Yes, I am sure.
and I never saw her again. And that.
Well, then that did it. You said you tried to kick her out several times.
And you know, we've never done a DNA test, but she's a gift from God as well. You know.
So is she in your life?
Pardon?
Is she in your life?
Yes, we talked to her. We see her. She was at mine and Rosina's wedding, and see, Rosina's a pretty fast girl. This is another, but you know, most ladies, it takes at least 9 months to get pregnant, have a child. But she was a grandmother 13 months after.
Well,
after Rosina.
congratulations.
And yeah, she's my grandson. She had a baby shortly after, a little over a year after me and Rosina were married. And her son is now 15, and he wears size 15 shoes, and he's 6'4". And I don't know what he'll be like when he grows up. He's a champion on about 3 different basketball teams, and I had no sports in my bodies, but
That is awesome. Okay, so
but
then the girls ended up meeting her shortly thereafter or something like that?
yes. And well, actually, we had went to the spaghetti place or whatever, and then I told her my daughter's staying at just a few blocks from where I was, and this is, would you like to meet one of your sisters or whatever? And so we went over to Tim Hortons, and I invited her from Tim Hortons right across the residence where she was staying, and she was right over. And I took pictures of the two of them. And my youngest daughter had been in college for a couple of years, and when the pictures in Peace River, when I showed them to people, that some of them didn't know which was which.
Wow.
So to me, that's about as good as a DNA test. But
Absolutely. That's so how much older than your oldest daughter is she?
she is she's 48, 49. She would be 48, and me and Ethel's daughter, oldest daughter, is 44. So I guess it's 4 years difference.
Okay. 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 So 29. Oh, very good. Okay. Well,
But she's a gift from God as well. You know, God can change evil and make things turn out good.
absolutely.
That is my view.
Your takeaway from that one. Yes. That is a beautiful story.
And my mother died and about a year before she died, she was living in the nursing home, and I went there and she wondered if I would stay for dinner. And no, I was going to go to the cafe and devote for dinner. And she says, I'll eat at the same table as you.
Oh.
And I still remember that quite plainly. I said, yeah, we'll. And when I don't know if I wheeled her in the wheelchair out to the dining area or the nurse come to get her or whatever, the worker, but she told the worker, I'm going to eat at the same table as Herman. And are you sure? And then so she set it up, and then just before somebody said grace for the whole works, she asked my mother again. She's a lady with a beanie on, and I don't know who her name or anything. Are you sure you want to do this? And she said yes, and nothing more. I never heard anything. We ate, and you know, it never really occurred to me until I went home and talked to Ethel and told her about it. And Ethel told me, well, your mother was saying that she forgives you, even if the Holdemans don't. And you know, I maybe I'm a slow learner, but uh, it took her to show me that. And
Well, was this a Holdeman nursing home she was at?
yes, it was the Holdeman Ridge Valley. And it's the later one, the one that my dear wife today worked there at one time, but it wasn't her that was working there then.
Well, good for your mom.
Pardon?
Good for your mom for doing that in front of everybody.
And another thing that I remember my mom, more than once she told me Rosina was a lovely worker there. And she said once that, you know, when they come and comb your hair or brush your hair, you can tell which ones are caring for you and which ones are just
There for the money.
there for the work wages or whatever.
Yep.
And but yeah, so after Ethel died, and I I still remember I was things hadn't changed for me. I was still interested in ladies and whatever, and but I when I had this experience that God gave me victory. I didn't have to buy any more pornography magazines, hide them or whatever, and uh, I had victory. But I'll move on to Rosina's and my romance. When me and Ethel had just got married, and this was almost 30 years earlier, or before we got married. We were going together, and I went to the mail and grabbed a bunch of stuff and brought it to my pickup, and she told me that there's a letter from a girl here. What's this? And Rosina had written to me, and after hearing that Lila had passed, and but anyway, I told Ethel I don't have anything. I'd open it. Ethel was the one who opened the letter from Rosina, and I think I wrote her back a time or two. She seems to have a little different memory of it than I do, but she decided she was going to stay with the Holdeman Church. And but after Ethel died, my mother gave me, said she given enough money to the messenger of truth that that should be able to I should be able to get it as long as I lived, she thought. And I saw Rosina's mother's obituary in there, so I sent Rosina a sympathy card, and so we did a little bit of correspondence. And one of the things that I remember, she wrote in one letter, she wondered if I couldn't take up my cross and join the Holdeman Church. And that was a tough one to answer, but anyway, that we did have a few. And after the the Christmas Eve life-changing thing, I found Will Stoppel's Will and Vivian Stoppel's writings on the internet, and I contacted her, and she sent me piles of literature, and then I studied their what they had on the internet, and see, another thing, before I read, I'd phoned the pastor. Mum had given me one or two books of Mrs. Stoppel's, and that sort of persuaded me that it's
You
got
mean
to
when
be.
she was in the good graces of the church still?
Yeah, she wrote
Yeah.
2 books in the
Yes.
good graces, and I
Yep.
think I've got them both here someplace on the shelves.
Well, you know that
And
story, right? She wrote the
and
2 books. She was
and
They thought she was wonderful, a wonderful writer, so they commissioned her to write on the One True Church. And when she started doing the study for that book, she found out that that was not scriptural. And therefore, she said, and I cannot do
yeah,
that.
there's so I contacted her, and uh, yeah, and another person I contacted when I was 13, 14 years old, 14 or 15, there was a group of 5 families that got excommunicated. They joined, most people back then uh, got excommunicated for the same thing as me do. And another, but there was 5 families got excommunicated, and one of them was a minister. Rosina, my wife's aunt, or uncle, and I phoned him up because I remember my father telling me that when this happened, if this is true, they'll all be united or together 50 years from now. Well, this is about 50 years, and I phoned Alvisa, and yes, they weren't all together in the same place, but without me asking him, he told me what my Uncle Walter and his wife were doing, and he told me what Sam Taves and his wife were doing. He told me about Pete Isaac and his family, and he told me about his dad. His dad had been a deacon, and so to me, that looked like they were all together. He knew exactly where they were all at, and that struck me. That really struck me, and so yeah, that. But anyway, where was I at here? I was
I'm on the edge of my seat because you're telling me about your romance or your courtship with your lovely.
Oh,
Yeah, so
yes.
I gotta know, like, which don't jump ahead for me, but I'm dying to know. Like, apparently she left the church for you because you didn't become a Holdeman.
And yeah, you're right. uh, and so I had phoned the minister, and God had made it very plain to me that, you don't have to join that church. And all of a sudden, I get a phone call from him toward, and we could meet, and why don't you come down, and all the rest. And so I did, and it was after I'd worked night shift, and I had an appointment to get a windshield replaced, and it was quite cracked up or whatever. And so I went there, and in fact, I slept it there. I got there about 9 o'clock in the morning, I think, and I slept there till noon while he was at a minister's meeting or something. And then he came home with a deacon, and I think we had a gap in the table. They gave us dinner, and we talked, and and I explained to them that, as I saw it quite plain, that God didn't want me to join that church, and I I explained to them not to add to the Bible, and then they got their conference decisions. Well, that's just guidelines, and every organization has to have a certain amount of structure and all the rest. But anyway, uh, I was about to leave, and I said, "Well, let's have a prayer before." Nobody else, and of course they led in the prayer then once I suggested it. And I was out in the truck, and the minister followed me out there, and then he says, "Wait a minute, I'll go into the house and get something for you." And he went into the house, so I said, "I'll wait." And he went into the house, and he come out with this brown bag, and in it he had all the stuff that I'd sent to Rosina. I'd sent her some stuff from the Stoppels. I'd sent her, and she said, "Rosina doesn't want to hear from you again." Eh, so it looked like that was completely out. And so I prayed about it, and every day I would think about Rosina, because my mother had told me, see, they were ministers, and she couldn't figure out really why so many guys were interested in girls that weren't interested in them. And here I knew there was a girl who had been interested in me, and I hadn't been smart enough back 60 years ago or 50 years ago to see it. But anyway, so every day Rosina would come to mind, and I
Okay,
would.
but wait. I think there's a part of your story missing because the last I know is that you sent Rosina, correct? You sent
Yes,
Rosina a sympathy card for when her mother passed away. So then apparently you guys struck up a friendship again.
we did do a little
Communicating back and
writing
forth.
back and forth. And one of the things I do remember was, "Couldn't you pick up your cross and join the church.
So then at
Uh,
some point you must have sent her this Vivian Stoppel stuff, but you guys must have had enough communication that you felt comfortable doing that.
Well, I I probably am smart enough to know when people want to say no. But anyway, we did have a little bit. It seems to me we talked on the phone once, but I'm not even sure. But anyway, handing me that whole package of stuff that I'd sent her over 2 years or whatever, and she doesn't want to hear from you again. That sort of cut things off. And every day I would think about her and I would pray to God. I pray to God. I don't want to do anything more here. It's up to you. It's up to you. And every day, and
This
sometimes
minister, was he anything to Rosina or not? Just her minister.
well, he and his she was the head of the Ridge Valley home there then,
Okay.
and that was another thing that didn't really make sense to me. I just taken Bible studies at the church, and a man is supposed to be the head of the household, and if she was going to be for me, how on earth am I going to be head of somebody who's got 17 or with the part-time staff? I think she's had 17, uh, and I don't know how many, and she was the top paid person or whatever.
So was she their administrator or like their DON?
Administrator.
Okay.
Administrator. But anyway, every day, and this happened while I'd seen, I think it was the 25th or 27th of January. There was no contact, and but yet I couldn't take her out of the mind. And we had a common friend. She had a bed and breakfast in Crooked Creek, and I'd stayed there once or twice, and I knew her. Well, she grew up there too, Flo. You may have heard of her, but she called. It was just about mid or a little further into June, and we talked quite often. So she asked me something about Rosina, and I think I even told her that Rosina didn't want to hear anything from me, but I'd got the message I'd got. And
was Flo a Mennonite?
She was excommunicated for marrying Mr. Mitchell. She was excommunicated for witchcraft, but that'd be another story. But anyway,
I would love to hear that story.
I'll after the we'll talk about that.
Okay.
But anyway, she called and she said, Rosina can't quite forget you. She'd like to meet you. Her birthday's coming up. And her birthday's on July 1st. And
the minister had given you this packet and cut it off when?
In the end of June, end of January.
Okay, so 6 months later.
It was 5 months, 4.5 months later, whatever they called me. And I prayed for Rosina every day or multiple times a day. I could not get her out of my mind. And so we agreed, and we were going to meet on at her place on the 1st of July, and And at 6 o'clock, I believe it was. So I believe I bought cake and ice cream at. I was in Grand Prairie before I went that way, and we met there, and we had our supper and lovely cake and all the rest. Later, I find out she's not a cake person, but anyway. And we went back out to the back, and then Roy and Flo left. That was and me and Rosina were there in the back, surrounded by and we talked. And well, I suggested we pray. One of the first things, and that was the start of our relationship. And we got married on one of the last days of August. It's just typical Mennonite sort of system, you know. You're not engaged for a long time, but we
Okay, but
we were
no,
both old enough to know what we wanted.
okay,
And
but a lot of had to happen for that to. She left the church. At what point? What? How did all of that go down? Maybe I should talk to
well,
her.
you should do one with her on this one, but because she was a missionary, 4 years in Belize, 4 years in Bolivia, 4 years in Mexico, and 2 in Belize, I believe.
You tell her to
And
expect my phone call. I'm going to
and
call her.
she was the head administrator. She was the administrator at the home there. So
And you dirty old dog, you got her away from her religion and married the woman.
I took one of the crown jewels, but so that's that and she's been a wonderful support. I've never had to worry about being the head of the.
You've never had to worry about being head of the house because she just naturally you are, or because she is.
She maybe she rules. We know where the lines are,
Okay,
and
so
God
how?
has given me 3 wonderful wives,
Yes,
and
that,
uh, I worked 22 and a half years as a chaplain or as a power engineer, and I saw people go through 3 divorces, and to me that would have been tougher to deal with, and so yeah, and since then I
wait.
worked.
I did want to say that you had said that you felt or alluded, I'm not sure which one, that God had taken the 2 wives away because of how you had been. But no, I don't see it that God blessed you with 3 wonderful women, probably to show you that women, have a lot more value than just sex to be used for that.
Yeah,
And so he gave you 3 amazing women. But how long I'm sorry, what year did you get married to her?
Regina in 2008. I think it's
Wait, you got married what? That many years? How old are you?
me. I'm not as old as the Hills yet. The Hills are living down the street here, and they're no. I'm 77.
Okay, and so you were married the first time for about a yearish.
Yeah, I was 30 the first time I got married,
The second
and
time you were married for 26 years,
yeah,
and now you've been married for
16.
16 years. Look at you. That's amazing. Good for you. Congratulations. Okay. You can go on.
Okay, and so I worked after we were married. I worked 4 years at the pulp mill, and I was also a volunteer as a at the prison with some other fellows who would go in and help with services there. And I after I quit at the I quit twice actually at the pulp mill. I quit once because I turned 65 and they weren't going to have to pay for medical system and a few other things. And I said, well, then my wages should go up. No, it doesn't. So I don't have to work. I gave them well, next thing you know, I actually had 5 days off before I was in there as a contractor. And
Well, there you go. Long live that retirement.
but I was still working shift work. I was the lead, all the time that I worked there for many years. Well, I'd been a lead for a year and a half. I'd wanted to be, it's another 15, not 15, or 15% more wages as a lead. I wanted to be a lead. But after I quit the second time and I was still a lead, I'd been a lead for a year and a half, and the shift work I didn't like, and I realized my ladder had been leaning against the dealing with sick time, people coming in late, and all those issues. I like the simple job where I just boil water and burn, keep the fires burning and boil water and make electricity. But to do this dealing with human is not my preference. But so
that lead, in reality, the lead wasn't as exciting as it sounded.
No, it wasn't, and I shut that down. And then because I was a second class power engineer, and that was in high demand in the oil field, I would get sometimes 2 calls a week, go to Saudi Arabia or go to Iran and make 4 times as much money as you were. But I was freshly married, or 4 years, and no, I turned that all down. But then when the college local college wanted a power engineer instructor, I took that and I did that for 2 years. And I figure I like to think that for a high school dropout to turn into a college professor, that's one of the impossible things I've done. I like doing the
Exactly.
impossible.
You're like Stuart Litwiller. He's now Dr. Stuart Litwiller.
Oh yes. And all this shortly after we got married, somebody talked me into going to the jail for a Sunday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon and help with services. And I'd been doing that for a few years. And then when they had no chaplain, and it went on for months, and I could see that there was a lot of things that the prisoners weren't getting that they should. And so I applied for the chaplain job. And I got the response I got is, you got all the qualifications except you're not ordained. Well,
You're like, I can fix that.
I mentioned that to one of the elders in the church, and I think we can fix that.
Yeah.
And so they wanted me to go take a 1-year course, which I did. But by that time, there was another chaplain there, but I was still volunteering. But he only lasted 9 months, and when he left a month later, I was chaplain there, and mostly there's a lot of paperwork. You got to keep track of the Bibles you give out and all the rest of the stuff, which isn't my the paperwork isn't my what I really like. But you get to talk to some of these sometimes, and I uh, I got to know some of them, and uh, many of them were in there for things that weren't nearly as bad as what I'd done in my life. I've stole a car. I've stole,
Grew pot.
being a little bit of drug dealer, and some of them,
Drove drunk.
oh, why? Well, you had to drive. You couldn't walk. But anyway, uh, one of the it's an all male prison, and one of the things that in talking with them, I have come to the conclusion. They say that in the official statistics, that one out of five or six young girls are sexually abused, and most are not uh, uh, reported. And the official statistics are 1 out of 20 for boys, and and admittedly, it's not a perfect sample, the prison, but out of the prison there, the stories that I got told of most people think when a male has sex, well, he just got lucky. When a lady has sex, it's something different. And you know, some of these fellows, the babysitter is older than them, and I think the statistics are out. Is what I think a lot more of them are. It's sex is something that everyone is assigned a certain sex at birth, and people want to experiment and want to learn more, and and yes, uh, and yes, there's sodomy and all sorts of stuff that goes on, but I think it's not much different than the ladies. I think in the amount of men, but if you're 16 and go swimming, skinny dipping with a lady or whatever, and you're just lucky you're not abused, and so I don't think it gets nearly as much reported as this realistically, but that's just my opinion. And at the prison, I get to hand out Bibles and get to talk to them, and now I do take, when the chaplain is on holidays. I go in there, and if they requested Bibles or something like that, I get to see uh, some of that, but not as much, which I'm not looking for more work anyway, and I'm glad they have a chaplain there. And there at the prison, I see people who have no idea who their father was, and the mother was drunk all the time, and then they had trouble going to school. So they get kicked out, and they never learned to read and write, and they're not stupid. It's just that they, and then I get to see other people who are embezzlers of millions of dollars or robbed a bank or something like that, and it's a complete but the majority of them are from broken families. But that's where I see that. And another thing I was going to talk about is I had an article in the Messenger of Truth after I was expelled. I don't know if you ever heard about that.
No, how'd you get that pulled off? They just saw your name and said, okay.
It was an act of God, is what it was.
Okay, tell me.
There used to be a group called the Shunned. And
Yes.
On there, I still remember when it was talked about on there that how before communion they would have self-examination, and you would go around and say that everybody would have to say something. I have peace with God, and I believe in the church, and I forget what all they're trying to get, and
I think I have peace with God and man. I love this church and uphold her doctrines.
oh yeah, whatever. And
And
anyway,
it's been 22 years since I've said that, but okay.
uh, I there was quite a bit of chatter on the self-examination on the shun thing,
Mhm.
and then I went to church the following Sunday, and there was um, a sermon on self-examination, and it was entirely different than uh, I have peace with God at church or whatever. But anyway, and then I decided, well, I'd look at it, and it was mostly Bible Bible verses. There was very little comment. It was mostly Bible verses, and I wrote this thing up. And then when we got the Messenger of Truth, I noticed they had an email address, and it never really occurred to me that it could be published. But I sent it off to that email address because I'd been in that sort of the habit. I'd my mother had gotten me the
Messenger of
Messenger of
truth.
Truth and resigned. We were getting two for a little while. My wife had canceled hers, and so I sent it off, and I forgot about it. And all of a sudden, I got this email, and I get way more emails than I can. And I just about deleted it, but your article or something like that, and wondered if it was okay to publish it. And I just sent it back, yes, or whatever. And then about a week later, I was looking and I read it a little bit more closely. And then they wanted my and signature on it. So I printed it off, I signed it, and I saw that it had the address of Fairmont, Texas. And I didn't live in Fairmont, Texas. I lived in Peace River, Alberta. I crossed out Fairmont, Texas, and wrote Peace River in there, or Alberta, and sent it back again. And it was, I'm not sure which happened first, but about the 5th of April or 4th, I got a phone call from a minister in Peace River, or in Crooked Creek, and we talked for half an hour, wondered about, and I wondered what this was all about. And a day or so later that day, I think, or the next day, somebody from the States wondered about this article from Herman Friesen, Peace River there. And I never got a copy of that. I saw pictures. Different people sent me pictures of the thing, but my subscription to Messenger Truth elapsed, and I think that's what the minister they're calling me. See if he should. But he just phoned to town. We were related, and so I think that, and it was April 1st. I think it was 2015. So if you can get April 1, 2015, and look for self-examination, and the pictures I seen saw Herman Friesen, Peace River, Alberta, but it was, I wondered how on earth this went about. And then later I found out, it was almost a year later, I found out there was a Herman Friesen from Fairmont, moved to Linden, Alberta. And since then, apparently he's moved back. But, well, Peace River is probably, if you're an editor down in Florida or something, Peace River is probably 5 minutes from Linden, eh?
Wow. Okay. I wonder if they put a retraction in the next Messenger of Truth.
I haven't heard of that, but so we went without Messenger of Truth in our house for about 8 months, and I always found it nice to know who died and a few other things, and I just about quit arguing with, so every once in a while I'd send a minister or somebody who wrote an article, I find their address and send them a comments on it, but this is right, this is not. I was always taught in Toastmasters you should use the sandwich effort, praise a person, then tell them where they can improve, and then praise them again. And sometimes some of the articles are trying to find something to praise about it, and some of them articles are good, but I haven't been doing much reading on the Messenger of Truth lately. But anyway, it was 8 months later. I sent them a check for subscription, and but I also note that I thought my mother had said that she'd given enough that it should last me for my life, but and so I got a phone call from wherever they publish them in
Mound Ridge, isn't it?
whatever, and mentioned that. And well, I sort of do remember. Well, it might have been just a mistake or something. I didn't that we took you off the list, and I've been getting it ever since.
It was
Yes.
just a coincidence that after we published your article, we took you off.
Well, we didn't discuss my article. I didn't think that was politically correct. But anyway, that was something else I was good. Other than that, that's just about my story. Is there any questions?
Now, you were going to tell us about being bikers for...
Oh, Bikers for Christ. Well, bikers are often quite notorious for, and I have a friend who has the servant's heart. We were feeding the homeless here in Peace River, people that were, and I helped him quite a bit, and I'm not into riding bicycle. I sold my last bicycle or motorbike quite a few years ago. But I've supported him in his missionary, and I see quite a few. There's the drug deals and a few other things that happen from motorbikes, or yeah. And I've been supporting them, and so I've got my. I don't have my jacket today. I one of the pockets, but I've got a bike jacket, and I support them because I am a strong believer that the Bible is God's word, and it is true, but There are so many ways that you can take one verse or one, the musical instruments isn't in the New Testament. Well, I got news for you. The New Testament does have a few places in Revelations, and I think one other place, I don't have them all, where music is and when people are going to kill you for you're not going to be uh, playing drums, come kill me. God works in strange ways sometimes. And just because, I can't play a harmonica. I've tried. I cannot make it work. And my daughters have all had music lessons and the likes, but I sometimes envy them. And, I can't speak in tongues. I speak English damn poorly. And I'm not going to condemn everybody who can pray in tongues or whatever. And as chaplain at the prison, I worked with the Catholics. I worked with Anglicans. I worked with a lot of different Mennonite groups, and Mennonite ones are especially, we're right, and dealing with the inmates is no problem, but dealing with some of these that figure the King James Version is the only Bible, or God spoke King James. Dealing with the volunteers is a lot bigger challenge than dealing with the true sinners,
Right.
And when I do speak there, some of my favorite, is the thief on the cross, the fellow on the cross beside Jesus, the adulterous woman. Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. And it's only with God that He can change that. And the fellow on the cross, he never went to baptismal classes. He never went to seminary. He never. All he did was look to Jesus and say, "Remember me." And some people will say, "Well, you're justifying the evil life," but Christ and His grace, and we're all in a different place in our journey, and I for many years I was a bench warmer in the different churches, but deep down I thought I'll have to join the Holdeman Church, and just like Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness, I spent about 40 years. Yeah, and that's my thought for today. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I liked the putting it, okay, I'm going to paraphrase it, but like that you struggle with pornography or things, of that nature. And that once you had your true conversion, that you were, that was put into perspective, I guess.
Yes, that gave me victory, and I worked with Celebrate Recovery. We don't have one going here now, and there's a lot of people there that have alcohol addictions. They have drug addictions, but sex addictions. There's Alcohol Anonymous. There's Narcotics Anonymous. There's Overeaters Anonymous, and in the bigger cities they have a Sex and Love Anonymous. I haven't seen it in Celebrate Recovery completely, but I'm God is there to help us, and
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I'm a strong believer You know, there's some people leave that church, and all religions are the same, and question whether there's a God, and I can understand some of that, but I'm and we have a lot to be thankful for in growing up in some of the Holdeman things. Not all of the guys got 2 sex ed classes in the hospitals, or
You're right. Well, Herman, I really appreciate you taking this time to tell me about your story. I really, really enjoyed it. So, thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you for listening. It is an honor to connect with our guests, and we wish the best for them as well as our listeners. Remember to like and subscribe for more episodes. Our People can be found on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. If you are interested in sharing your story, please contact us at ourpeoplepodcastteam@gmail.com. Thank you.